and how we would be judged by our professor that we just met. Me too. So what I'm going to be focusing on today is the three techniques of inquiries, which ask us to be more of advocates to ask more questions in team settings. So we're going to be talking about question brainstorming, colored questions, and the TQR, which is thinker, questioner, and reflector. Sorry. The first one is question brainstorming. So if we're working in a team, we want to brainstorm questions, and this has to do with the wicked problem, which is an ambiguous problem that we don't have a solution to right away. We have to think outside the box, as noted in one of our articles. And to do so, we can't really focus on finding an answer. So instead, we have to focus on developing other questions. And through that, we're able to expand, be more creative, and figure out how to come to the problem itself. So through brainstorming, it is efficient that as IO practitioners or working in teams, we have a time bound for this. So we don't spend too much time and we focus a little bit more on what's important. And as well as making sure it's time bound, making sure that once we're asking questions and developing more out of those, that we're making sure that we're focusing on the important things. With the brainstorming questions, we have colored questions, which were developed by Jerry Rhodes, and he implemented this scheme when working with Phillips, and he was researching management. So by developing 3 different colors, green, blue, and red, he decided to categorize the questions that were being asked, whether they were facts, possible imagination, or judgments and opinions. By putting the questions into these 3 different categories, the organization and team were able to classify what needs to be looked at now, what needs to be addressed, and what can help them move on in the future based on these 3 different colors. And moving forward, if the questions seemed unclear, they could also use the technique of thinker, questioner, and reflector. If a question comes up and you feel like you have no idea of what the person is saying, or if you just want to clarify someone's question more, you would do this 5 to 7 minute session in order to help the member express himself more, and the thinker is able to speak out loud and say their ideas. The questioner is able to ask the speaker what they're trying to say, and then the reflectors at the end are able to reflect on based on what they heard. So it's all active listening, asking the right questions, and most importantly, making sure that the questions are being asked openly. With these 3 techniques, we can invite as IOS practitioners or as leaders in our organizations to help implement questions being asked. And maybe if we were taught these 3 different ways of implementation on questions at the beginning of the semester, maybe we'd be invited into asking more questions. And in the future, we could practice this more by feeling non-judgmental to our peers and using the TQR to be able to invite others to ask questions throughout and explain themselves a little bit. So I think these 3 techniques will be really important to implement and invite organizations to ask questions to solve difficult solutions. What did I do wrong? I think kind of using the scenario taking was well. That was kind of the last minute thing. What I could improve on next time. I practiced this several times, and I think I did better while I was practicing. I think smiling, that was something that I've said before. I tend to look serious when I present just because I'm trying to say what I have to say. I think being a little bit more confident and comfortable explaining what I have to say. And 3 people who I could who wants to say.
Gabriele did well. The one thing I can tell is you had it memorized, and then there was always those second guesses. You kept on looking back, making sure that you were on the right spot. And yeah, you stumbled, but I feel like you always, if you were like you were 90% sure of yourself, and you were that 10% more, you would have aced it. It was that the nerves got to you, and I know how it is up there. But B plus. So you could go.
I think he used very high level vocabulary, which was like also engaging. And then you had a good flow of your information. It was informative and smooth, and your hand movements were good, like on point. The only thing I would say that you could improve was the stronger closing, like just keeping that sternness. And it kind of seemed like you gave out the last moment, but like just with that strong closing would have been like kind of another good.
I enjoyed what's in your percent. I think like the body movements were pretty good. You looked like you were composed. You didn't look to me like very nervous or anything. Yeah, you looked maybe a couple times that you forgotten something, but the overall feeling that I had, like you were confident out there. So that was very enjoyable. I also liked how you made me picture the exercises that you were explaining, because if you're explaining things, sometimes it's difficult to see how that would be in real life. And I was able to understand that. So I think that you did a great job there. And maybe just to add something, I think that maybe using the voice a little bit more intentionally in some points could help you. And overall, it's really good job.
Like stressing certain points.
Yeah, like sparking emotion with the voice. So.
Me? All right. I really liked the use of a common experience that most people, maybe everyone, but most people had, like the initial orientation, I believe is what you're referring to. That was really good because you got everyone back into that frame of like, yes, that here's where we were. Actually, we're in a different place now. But how do you do that more quickly? What does that look like as an intentional strategic path? And I thought that was really good. So good, in fact, that I think it would have been even more impactful to do this. I think that's what I was looking for. Like
Practice
just have someone up there, do it. Like that would have been great. You'd have pre-scripted the whole thing, which is fine. But it could take 3 minutes of your presentation. That would have been more informative and more memorable and less pressure on you, to be honest. And you're okay to do that. Like you don't. Yes, it's good to have your own presentation. You'll probably gain the most out of that. But if you want someone else to be part of your presentation, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no rules against that in any way. You could have had a person that was part of your kind of scripted experience to like go through this with you, right? To say like, okay, here's my just thinking out loud, just spitting through stuff. You ask some pertinent questions that are again scripted, and then you reflect and you demonstrate, show us, and then debrief what that is, what that looks like, and we're just all blown away at how amazing you are, even though the whole time was already scripted. So, you know what I mean? Like that would have been really impactful, just as a future kind of tool in the tool belt for you to leverage. Because, I mean, by all means, anyone could do that. I think it would be really, really nice. The content was really good. I thought it was nice and useful, practical. It applies to us here. You referenced our field and what we're going for. I think this is a probably underutilized component because oftentimes we just get the people that speak the most speaking, and those that speak less, for whatever reason that may be, normalcy, it gets developed, and then if you don't talk much, then you tend to not talk much for the rest of that meeting, for the rest of that time, for the rest, right, for the duration of that collective experience.
I'm just looking at it.
Okay. It's okay. So anyways, that's what I would say is the kind of takeaway for me. It's like, okay, this is really good information. Let's leverage this, more readily.
Yeah, so I decided to do questions because it's something that popped up to me. I know that's something that makes me really nervous to do. So I was like, I think I should present it because I know a few of us feel the same.
There you go. You could go with the advice giving effect. It'll benefit you. But great job. Thank you. Nice. I like it.
So it's a PowerPoint, but just so you guys know, the Canva thing actually does work. It's just on the corner. I don't know why we didn't find it last time, but you can actually use Canva and download it in PowerPoint. So that's what you got. So smart.
See what jealousy does to people?
All right. So in this week, we have organizational development. So for this presentation, this is going to be my last presentation of the year with you guys. So I want to bring you something of value that you can actually go to the workplace and say, okay, I understand this better. I can do my job as an IO better. It's something to help you. So in business, we need to understand, this is the intersection between psychology and business. So we have to really understand what business is about and how businesses work internally, what process they use to accomplish the goals that they want. So for that reason, everything starts with a mission. The mission of the company, the mission statement is going to tell you, it's going to respond to the question, why do we exist? It's going to tell us, what do we do? It's going to tell us what we don't do, and it's going to tell us how we do it. So in order to represent this, I want to bring you an example that is given in many different schools of business and business management. The last time I heard it was in the Thunderbird School of Global Management, #1 in the world, and it's in Arizona State University. This is the example of Ryanair. Ryanair is a low-cost company in Europe, the first low-cost company in Europe. And I want to bring you through their mission statement because it represents it just so well. So they offer low fares. So they're telling us that tickets are going to be extremely cheap. They're going to tell us that they increase passenger traffic. So there's going to be a lot of passengers. That's their purpose. And they're going to be focused on containment and efficiency, cost containment, which means they're going to be looking at reducing costs as much as they can. So what they're telling me is, if you've ever been on a flight with Ryanair, it is packed. It is horrible. There's people everywhere. It's not comfortable. They're not going to give you any comfortability. They're not going to give you any luxury. And if you don't bring your bags, and I don't have to bring your bags, even better. That's how much this is telling us about the company. Now, they have been in business for a long time, but for the past 12 years, they have been right here in the middle, competing against the biggest airlines in the world doing low cost. So that's how important it is to have a clear mission that tells you what do we do, what we're not going to do for you, and how do we do it. Now I bring you the opposite, and this is Fly Emirates. They're going to deliver the best in-flight experience. So they're going to give you luxury, they're going to give you the best treatment, the best customer service, everything. And even their promotion is going to be aligned with that mission. They use Real Madrid because in the world of soccer, Real Madrid is classified as the elite. It's like the best team in the world. People know it as the elite team. The next step is the vision of the company. You have to develop the vision of the company. The vision is going to guide the internal decisions that the company makes. So it responds to the question, where does the company need to go? Where are we going? Where do we need to be in the next years? And a lot of people have mentioned change, how much the business is changing, even though they're fuller before. So this helps us get there, because if we don't have a clear vision for the future, we're going to die as a company. So it's very important to have a clear vision. The next step is the strategy. Aisha was talking about the strategy. What strategy are we going to pick? We're going to have the possibility of selecting between just so many different strategies. So which one will be the right one?
To do the strategy, you're gonna develop the strategic objectives based on that vision. And it is very difficult because those strategic objectives can get just so messy, so burdensome, so big. So a way that companies utilize this or categorize them is with the four perspectives of every business. The four perspectives of every business is gonna be financial. So the strategic objectives that you develop with the company are going to be related to where do we need to be financially so that our shareholders are happy with us. Then what about the customers? We're gonna have strategic objectives to make sure that our customers are happy. If our customers are not happy, no business. We're gonna focus on internal processes. If we don't keep developing how well we do things, we're gonna lose that chance. We're gonna not be able to deliver the product. We're not gonna be able to keep the product well. So the strategic objectives, we're gonna focus on internal processes. And finally, learning and growth. That's where we develop our employees and make sure that they have the tools to keep on working, to keep on doing better in those. Once we have the strategic objectives, we need a measure that is telling us how are we doing. So that's when we use KPIs. The ones in there are actually KPIs. So that's gonna tell us how well are we doing against the strategic objectives that we have. You can have the best strategic objectives in the world, but if you don't have a way to measure them, you have no idea what you're doing. So this is kind of how everything looks like. It's gonna start with the mission. I wanna give you actually my example because I did this with the organization that I worked for. I worked there for a little bit and I realized how much misalignment of resources there were. People knew a little bit about the mission, but they weren't very clear on it. So we revisited the vision, made sure that everyone was on board with it and believed in it. Then we developed the whole vision and brought them through the process of the vision. After that, we developed the strategic objectives for the company to make sure that we were going in the right direction. And then the measurements, performance. Then is when they ask me, okay, we need a way to measure this. So, okay, performance system, now that we know where we're going, I know where I have to measure, and I want to give it a people perspective. And finally, development. In development is where you can put the competency model. Are we giving them the tools they need to succeed in performance? So this is how much we can do. And once you understand this, and you say to a company that you consult for, okay, I know what your mission is, I know where you're going, or I'm helping you get there, I'm helping you develop the strategic objectives, and I'm even giving your employees, the people in the company, the tools to succeed. That's when the executive team are gonna come to you, and they're gonna say, my God, you understand my business, you understand where I'm going through, you understand what I need. Please select my people. Select the people that are gonna drive this, that are gonna make this happen. Selection, recruitment, where do we place them? Placement. Even in the pre-hire assessment process, where are we testing for? We're testing for people that are gonna help the business accomplish this. So that's how important is our job. And finally, just remember that people are our greatest asset. Really, that's what we're coming as a psychologist, and everything that we do should have a people perspective in the performance system. We're gonna build that and passing from being the judge and jury of the employee to build their coach and their mentor. That's when we put or implement a mentorship program that we're learning right now. That's how much impact we have. So thank you, and I hope that you can understand a little bit better how businesses work internally, and that whenever you go there, you just realize how much value you guys have to make this happen. I think I explained a pretty big concept like last time, but this time I didn't want to put as much information. I wanted to make it a little bit more accessible, but at the same time give you something that gives you a more view from the top instead of from the actual piece. So where does the strategic objectives that I chose, like, given as a presentation on? Now, if we look at it from the top, we see like where that fits, or even the exercises that Gabby was giving us, where would we fit those in any of those places. So I think I did that well. What will I improve next time? I would love to have just a little bit more time because I was going to give you something to rate yourselves at the beginning and at the end of the presentation, but because of how much it was, I was like, I'm taking this out so that it's not as long. So yeah, I would say do something better. have a handout with time. My three people are gonna be Marina, Ray, and Dominic.
I enjoyed your content. I can really tell that you really love IO. Like, it's very evident. Well, I'm trying to think of something you can improve on, but I actually think that you're an excellent presenter. Because when you're passionate about the work, it's easy for you to be able to present.
Thank you.
How do you bring that much energy?
That music. Because not much energy. I don't know. Because I'm 24 years old. I mean, if I don't have energy, no, really, I don't know. Like, I think from eating healthy and doing exercise is better. And sleeping. Sleeping 8 hours a day is awesome.
Thank you for the energy. It's very not only informative, it's engaging, and like anything else, it's like you call for your presence. It's just like I'm here, pay attention. It's a good message to deliver. Your body movement is good. And in order to, I don't know what could be better.
I really like the first question. I never got asked that, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Do you understand the content?
Mm. Yeah, about the organization.
So maybe that's the point where I like to do even better. And I'll try to bring some more examples.
I think going off what you just said, like, I think I kind of missed your personal flair more with this presentation. I kind of missed like your personal stories and your personal spin on things more. But this was definitely your beat. This is your topic. I just kind of missed maybe more of your character. I think you're focusing so much on Ray as the topic that I kind of just, I don't know, the last one you brought more of yourself. But I kind of missed that. I love how you start off with your why. You gave us a reason why we need to listen. And you brought us on this incredible journey of what this topic is, and then you ended with this emotional feel, which I really appreciate.
What is the, can you like tell me one more time the explanation?
Like the charisma one was so you, like you had so much of you in that presentation that I kind of missed it in this one. Like it seemed like that presentation was just a page out of your storybook, whereas this is definitely your topic. I mean, I know how much you love this topic. I just wish I had more of that. Maybe your personal experience with this topic, your experience. Because it just seemed like your examples were a little far out from you, that you draw from.
Because I do have examples, like, you know, like pictures of the Asian stuff, but if I try to prove those examples, then how am I able to talk about everything in 5 minutes?
I think that's where, yeah, I guess I want to hear more. I want to see you, yeah. But I guess time doesn't allow it.
I would love that.
I think one of the, if you're talking about your examples, there was one part that I think could have been more impactful. I think I love the emphasis on the airplanes, and that example was amazing. I think it really helped us understand how the entire content was implemented within organizations. I think it could have been tied in better when you talked about our impact. When you're wrapping it all up, instead of having your story, continue with the airline story. Because you've been through that at the beginning of the presentation, and it would have wrapped it up. And I think you adding your story was great, but if you would have started with your story, it would have made sense.
Right.
But because you added your story like randomly at the end, it was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
So it would have been more impactful to stay with one example. Maybe add different examples if you have different points, and then but make sure you wrap up.
I think that's what she's saying, like those airline examples are just not far-fetched, they obviously fit the topic, but I didn't know how to relate it back to you, which I wanted to relate it back to you, just because your other presentations were so much of you, and, does that make any sense?
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So nice.
I'm talking about alignment.
behind your presentation. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think, yeah, obviously it was a good presentation. It was informative, very, very detail heavy, right? You have a lot of content that you try and move through in a relatively short amount of time. And I think that's going to be probably a theme for your experiences, especially as you develop more expertise, more knowledge base, more information. You just gather all this. And then it's like you finally have someone that asks, that is interested, that you finally have that organization that you can consult for in just like kitchen sink, everything. Just like, I can help you in every single possible way, right? That's tempting, right? It's like you have such a generous desire to give as much of the information as you possibly can pack into 5 minutes or 7 minutes. Which is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's much appreciated for everyone here. There are challenges to that, and you encounter those challenges often, right? It's painful to take things out. It's difficult to then, you're going to have to discern what to keep, what's most important. How do I leverage this 5 minutes and make it longer? I think the handout idea would have been really good, because then it's something that we get 5 minutes, but then maybe we get to pour over a handout for a little bit more time afterwards, something we can physically take with us. I thought was a really good idea. Just in the content itself, I thought the mission part was really strong. That was good. I liked that. The Ryanair example, I think, is really good. I liked that. The strategic component was really good as well. The vision part, it felt kind of anemic. There wasn't much there as far as example or even physically on the PowerPoint itself. Like there wasn't a model, there wasn't a definition. It was lacking probably because of time. So I'm not saying you don't know what vision is. Of course you do, but it's just how much time can we dedicate to each of these concepts so that we can have people have a full comprehensive picture, right? Like some things are going to get left out. So how do we give them a deliverable? How do we give them something that they can have that is like a full package?
It's funny that you say that, because just so you guys know, our project for the company is developing their vision.
We're presenting on Monday.
I'm just like so much on it.
Yeah.
I didn't put anything.
Yeah.
So, and I could have, instead of like showing you everything, I say, okay, I'm gonna tell you how to develop the vision of the company, and then we focus only on that.
Right.
And I will show you the script, I will show you the process, I will show you the pictures, the details I have for my previous company, some of the research that we did. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But maybe it's just so readily on your brain, right? And this happens to us, and I love that you're being so candid about it, because this happens all the time, where we are so inundated in a particular topic, material, or concept, we just assume everyone else is too, because we are. So of course they wrote their vision, so they know all about vision. They know what this means, how this is captured, how it's conveyed, and how it measures to these other features. Well, no, they don't. Sometimes they don't. And the assumption can get us into trouble sometimes, but I appreciate that it's humorous that you're going to present on vision. So that's good. I think you'll have a lot of great content for them.
We're not just like presenting like, hey, you should develop a vision statement. Like they're like, hey, you're gonna build our vision statement for us.
They also want us to do
Right.
We're just figuring out vision, okay?
No, like that's how massive it was. It's a group of actually 20 executives, the 20 executives of the company. We're gonna have them for 2 hours. So, this is how we can actually work together.
It's good. I think you did great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
So I would like to start off with an exercise. I would like for everyone to cross their arms. All right. Now that you all are comfortable, I want you to reverse cross it. So the hand that was on top goes to the bottom, the one that was on top. The one that was on the bottom goes to the top. So confusing. For many, the first time you crossed your arms, you felt comfortable. Change has the tendency to make us feel uncomfortable. But change is needed in order to grow. I know for myself, I'm happy that I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago. Even though I was only like 15, I was a little wild, I was on the wild side. And my mom can attest to that. So to that, I say, thank God for change. Change is not just in our everyday lives, but change is also in organizations as well. So today, I'm going to be going over why organizations need change management, the internal and the external factors of change management, as well as a case study, and lastly, implementing change. I have a short clip that I would like you all to view.
Change management is managing the impact that these crucial adaptations can have on an organization's people. Four typical responses to change are the critic who opposes the change, the victim who panics, the bystander who ignores the change, and the navigator who's empowered to work with changing circumstances. The challenge for managers is to help people become navigators. Here's some things that we know that help this happen. Number one, communicate the threat of not changing. Number two, where possible, involve your team in decision making. Number three, minimize uncertainty. Number four, celebrate successes in moving towards the goal. Number five, keep explaining why we're changing. Remember that when there's an information vacuum, people often assume that managers are plotting terrible things. So number six, be as transparent as possible. To summarize, organizations must continually adapt in order to survive. To create change navigators, communicate the threat, involve your team, minimize uncertainty, celebrate positive shifts, and be as transparent as possible.
There are many internal and external factors of change. The first one being organizational culture. An example of needing change due to organizational culture could be an organization developing new values or new beliefs, or also new management. Next, technology. An example of this would be an organization developing a new ERP system. Next, we have competition. In order for an organization to stay relevant and compete, they might have to change the organization, how it's ran, the management, or even the product. Lastly, customers. The pressure of customers, specifically the product. And I have an example of that. Coca-Cola. So in the 1980s, Pepsi was developed as competition for Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola decided that they would come with a new product, a new sweeter Coke. But consumers didn't take that very well. So Coke had to go back to the drawing board. Once back to the drawing board, Coke decided that it was better that they revert back to the old formula. This is an example of successful change management. They listened to their consumers in order to save their product. Which now leads me to change management, how to implement it. Specifically, Lewin's model. Unfreeze, moving, and refreeze. So to unfreeze, you have to create a need for change. That might mean talking to your employees and letting them know why it is that change is needed in the organization. Then we're going to move. And when we move, we're going to learn new ways of doing things, which is implementing the change. After is refreezing. And in refreezing, you're going to sustain the change that you made. You're going to answer questions. You're going to make sure that all of your employees know and are on board with the change. And lastly, I want to leave you guys with some words of inspiration. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Thank you guys for your time. Okay, first, I enjoyed my camera presentation. I think I did a good job on that. I also think this time I was a little less nervous, still a little nervous, but hopefully it didn't show. And what would you improve? Next time I would improve, just once again, just always working on my confidence and being comfortable with being up here. And maybe a little bit more detail. All right, now, guys. If anybody would like to raise their hand, I'm open to feedback. All right, let's go with Tim.
All right.
Go with Tim.
Thank you for sharing Lewin's model. That's fun. I think Dr. Iverson referenced that early on, maybe. So I was glad that you went through that. And at the beginning, I could tell that you had memorized it and it felt a little choppy. And so I'm curious in the future if you'd ever try using a monitor. Like even if you set the monitor in front of you or to the side, you can at least reference it. I do that quite a bit for presentations. And that might help with your flow. But overall, I liked the content and it was informative to me and helpful. So thank you.
All right, Gons. I'm here to have to say last time you were saying this.
One more time.
The last time I presented.
Oh, sure, members. You did appear more confident, as you said. That's something that I did notice. I do feel more comfortable in there, which comes with practice. Kind of going a little bit with what Ray was saying, I want to see a little bit more of yourself here. Like it's almost as if you're reciting me what you learned almost like by memory, but like it doesn't feel natural to me. You know, like, I want to say like, oh, that's dumb. But I cannot say that. It's almost as a machine is telling me something. I don't want that. I want you. And then the other part is the video. I like it. I like the content of the video, but I feel like I can watch that at home. So I want to enjoy more of what you have to tell me than watching something.
Okay. So to what you were saying about sounding like a robot. So what would be your suggestion as far as memorization? Like last time, I didn't feel like I memorized, and that's why I was more nervous than this time when I came up and I knew I practiced and I knew I memorized what I said.
So your question is how to memorize it without.
No, I'm asking you, what would be an alternative?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
It was just like earlier today, I asked him, right, asked Dr. Gore, is it best to memorize a presentation, or is it better to actually really know the top topic or the subject that you're really going to talk about? That way, it naturally comes out more, it just flows when you know what you're going to talk about. I feel like for most people that actually try to memorize presentations, it's always like, just like you're saying that, they always, they either forget their lines or what do I say next or something like that. So I think it's really tough.
Yeah, what I do is I just typically will use repetition. So like if I'm explaining Lewin's model, I'll stand in front of a mirror and repeat it, recite it like 5-10 times. Like if I'm driving, like there's just portions where it's almost like chunked, where like this portion I'll just practice saying a lot, just to hear yourself. And the more practice, the better it is. But what I find is there are certain phrasings that start getting repeated when I practice, and they're like, oh, I like how that sounds. But the nice thing is that if I do forget that, it's easy just to take a pause when you're presenting and like you know the content. But I found that just repetition of small chunks, not like your whole presentation, is really helpful.
All right, Marina.
I just want to say a strong intro, and it was a good interactive activity. We felt that uncomfortableness that changed, and the country example is relevant, very relevant. And it was cool to hear Dr. Fuller mention that, and then I really reflected with the example. And just for some advice, it seemed like you knew your message. The only thing I think that could make it more engaging is if you hold eye contact with some people like individually, and just like to make it more palatable.
Okay. Thank you all for your feedback.
Yes. I think it was definitely better. You improved. I like to see growth. That's really good. You came up there with the intent to feel, demonstrate more confidence, which is good, right? That's a nice feature to contribute for yourself. I liked the activity. Starting with an activity, I think, is an easier way to begin a presentation. So that's good. You give yourself a little break, right? Of like, you don't have to carry the whole room. We will interact and do whatever you say. So that's a nicer intro. I would encourage you to do more of that in getting participation, getting more interaction. That part was really fun. I think you engage really well with people. You're a people person, but when you have to like recite, when you put the pressure on yourself to recite verbatim, word for word, it gets more robotic. And I think people feel like we can see that you're engaging and fun and interesting, and you have great humor. You talked about, you're happy that you changed, and your mother's happy that you changed from being 15 years old to now. So that's great. I think that's really relatable. And when we don't get that relatable, we're like, hey, where'd that go? Right? Like when you start with that, you're like, I wanted that the whole time, right? This relatable, interesting person that has good banter and humor and I can connect with. And now it's just like a script. So I think that's maybe some of the feeling that people have because of the engaging personality that you have. So that's a feature, right? Not a bug. So in that sense, I think you did a really good job with the whole presentation of like a lot of content, a lot of good information. You had that. The beginning was really strong. And it's just a matter of chunking the memorization and being comfortable with the content so that you can deliver it without feeling like you have to memorize the whole thing word for word or anything like that. Finding ways to do that, it just takes practice and time, and we'll get there. So you did a good job. It was a nice improvement, and I like to see that. Good job.
Many of us think of organizational development. Some of us might not have any idea of what that might mean. Organizational development is a broad term. So it depends solely on the organization and the company to specify what their mission is in accomplishing such development and change. But first, before we get into that, what is organizational development? It's a way to advance and adapt an organization's atmosphere, criteria, and relationship. The atmosphere is the atmosphere at the current company and the current organization for the employees that they are serving. The criteria is how they're going to understand, and have a relationship with those employees. And the relationship, that's the relationship that the employees are gonna have with the consumers. So how do you achieve it? Organizations and companies need to pinpoint what the problem is. So how do you make that possible? A guide. You brainstorm what can be affecting the organization. You come up with an abundance of possible problems. And then you start determining which one of these are the actual problems. And how can you tackle these problems? And then you start getting into knowing what the exact problems are and how you can eliminate them. So the reality is organizational development is happening on a day-to-day basis. Throughout this century, there's going to be a lot of change. Change is inevitable. The way companies used to reach out to customers, the way companies and organizations used to sell their products back in the day is completely different from what we do now. We have online options. We have apps. We have that flexibility. So the environment is what organizations and companies need to understand to reach out to their customers. So some employees don't like the change. And a good example of this is a coworker of mine. Her name is Stacy. She's been with the company even before we even bought the previous company for 20 years. So I work at Extra Space Storage. She's been there before Extra Space even took it over. She's been trying to become a store manager, but the position was never given to her, even though she's applied a lot of times. So it makes you wonder why that is. Why isn't somebody that's capable and has the numbers of years of experience, why can't they become store manager? The answer is simple. Her way of thinking is outdated. It isn't what the current company believes in. It's not the current company's criteria. So that conveys conflict because we have an employee that doesn't like the way the company runs it. She likes to do it what makes her comfortable. In addition to that, organizational change has to be flexible. It has to be flexible not to who we serve, but flexible within the organization and the company's walls. We have to convey and demonstrate training sessions, information sessions. And training can change month to month, day to day. It takes new mindsets to create something interactive, something different, something that can be idolized and taken viral. And then eventually we have the idea of organizational change. Does that mean layoffs? And most people believe that. Most people have this understanding that organizational change means they're shrinking down the company. They're letting go of people. And reality, that could be a possibility. That could be organizational change. So, summarize. Organizational change has to be adaptable so people can better serve the common consumer. People need to know how to target it and how to execute it effectively. And there's one thing I want to leave you with is how will you contribute to organizational change? Thank you. I feel like getting my point across, speaking being able to speak loud enough so you guys can hear me. Feel like I did that very well. What will I improve? Next time maybe, but it's probably here to reference, but maybe just kind of have a consistent flow and just having that memorized. Like Jeremy, Rob, and James.
I didn't get a chance to see you live for your first presentation, but I did check on YouTube. It was great. And this one, just as well. I like the professionalism. I like the details you put. I like the real world application that you use for your job, as well as giving us the idea of, oh, hey, this happens here. You know, it's not just it looks. So I appreciate that, and I think you have great skills. Values there, your posture, you know, I was very well engaged. I appreciate it.
Kind of going off like Rob said, I kind of like how you interwove your story to what you're like trying to like get your point out across about like trying to change and trying to adapt. And how you, sharing coworker like wasn't really.
And good job. It's a huge improvement from the first one. George didn't get hit with a laser. I didn't see you referencing the slides as you know, I was really watching intently. And I didn't catch it. Maybe you looked to the side, and if you did that, it's super effective. So I like the engagement that you have with the room. Towards the end, I felt like you started to lose it a little bit with content. And I think that's just going to get better, right? Like
Right.
you're getting more comfortable in front of people, and your content's coming along with that, right? You're bringing more every week, and so I really appreciate that growth. And but you know, continue to refine and make your content flow. Like I said, from your first presentation to this one, not like it was like, oh my gosh, your first one's like trash kind of thing, but just the organization of your slides is better and relevant points on it. Maybe some of your slides had too much on there. Could use like break it up a little bit, like give me a break in between slides,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I was trying to like keep like I was trying to put like one word on there.
Yeah.
So then I can just be like, okay, flexibility, you know, layoffs. But
And that's great because that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
You want stability and that, okay, I need to talk about this, this, and this kind of thing.
so that's been always a recurring thing. Like, oh, you have too much on there, but
Yeah.
it's mainly for like the audience, not for me to kind of like, you know, ABC. Like, let me just read exactly what I have on there.
Yeah.
It's more kind of like background information for you guys rather than information that I want to preach off.
There was one slide though that you used each point on there was something that you were talking about.
Mhm.
I picked up on that halfway through the slide, so I knew exactly how long this point was going to be, and that disengaged me a little bit because I was like, okay, I'm waiting until he's going to get to the next one. And maybe that's just my own preference, but you know, you asked me for my feedback, so. But great improvement. I really liked it. Thanks.
To mention with PowerPoint specifically for your practice before like rehearsal, you could use the notes feature, like just below the PowerPoint. You could type in your own notes, and I would say to put more information there and have your cue on the slide. Right? So like you have the main point that you want everyone to have in their mind on the slide, and then you're practicing almost like having all the content on the slide, but it's only present to you, right? That it's the content in the notes. And I believe, I'm not sure if that computer shows it or not, but you may be able to see the notes on that screen. Is that the case? Typically, yes.
Yeah.
Typically, you can see the notes if you're presenting in PowerPoint in presentation mode or whatever it is, because they'll give you a smaller picture of the actual PowerPoint and then the notes section that you can reference to use, and that's what it's for, right? So that you can have more content that is there for you to bullet point through without having to put every word of that on the screen so that we can, disengage and like, okay, I know exactly what he's going to say. It's almost like hindsight bias now. I've read through it quicker than he can say it, so now I feel like I already know it. But that's not true, right? We're deceiving ourselves with that. So we need less information so that we can depend and rely on your content that you're going to deliver to us, right? So it's kind of manipulating us, but in a good way.
Not lying to us.
Not lying to us like horrible people do, but manipulating. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But great job. Thank you. Good job.
Lots of.
So you guys are probably thinking, why are you presenting? So unprofessional. Before I do, let me just tell you guys that. Get a little bit personal. All right. So, first of all, at FedEx has many ideas. We have various groups within FedEx company that help us build, where FedEx tries to implement employees that where we can actually help build the company and make it much stronger. So I am actually a part of what's called a FedEx Freight focus group. And who are we? We consist of 8 city drivers with transportation, with 8 city drivers, and including the transportation manager. We address and attack issues that 5 city drivers can do their job. But, so we pretty much go and we meet everyone. So basically what we do when we have these meetings, we meet everyone and we talk about many issues that arise within the city driver department. We address safety issues. We address customer issues, technology issues, because FedEx is very big on technology. As you guys have seen, FedEx drivers have what we call the wand. We also discuss driver responsibility, hazmat issues. The company is very big on saving money, so they usually always want to discuss the issues on your time. It takes the driver a certain amount of time to actually get in his truck, do a post-trip, pre-trip, and to actually get out and start doing the work. Because the company, every cent counts. We also discuss managers, supervisors, dispatchers, start times, routing. We discuss injuries, traffic accidents, and basically we discuss any issues that arise. Right? So I am part of what is called the FedEx City Driver Program. So let me tell you guys a little personal breakthrough that happened. So when FedEx started this focus group back in 2018, we kind of wanted to make it big, right? Because it was the first time that FedEx had said, let's do this. Because we figured that FedEx, within the city driver, we know exactly what we need to do to do our jobs a lot. more efficient, right? So I actually came up with the idea that because of my personal experience, in my when I passed, I noticed that FedEx didn't have um, mental health awareness information out there for drivers or any employees, right? Because at that time, when I was going through a lot of personal stuff and personal issues, I didn't know, right? And I noticed that, and I was thinking also that I'm not alone, and I'm pretty sure that there are many, many out there that are probably going through the same thing. We're out there driving this huge truck and pretty dangerous. Somebody either probably having suicide thoughts or going through divorce or dealing with anxiety, right? So I came up with an idea where I actually, in our focus group meeting, I asked my operation manager that what we needed to do to actually provide the information to make it public and have it posted within our service center. And what he recommended was that first we build an action plan, right? And so we did. And we actually had it get approved the corporate office and we got it approved. So now we have what's called, we have the FedEx helpline, and we also have post reports. So we were able to get post reports for employees to have any kind of mental health awareness information. But back to why I'm in my FedEx uniform. It's because I wanted to show you guys that this is a FedEx focus group member, what we look like. And this is a city driver outfit here. Thank you. I think this time around, I think with all my three presentations, I've always done pretty personal, personal experiences. I think I do pretty well when it comes to that stuff. It's just so much easier. I guess since it's my last presentation, I'll just tell you guys that neither of my three presentations did I have to prepare for them. So that's why I seem like it's kind of easier for me just to kind of talk about what's related. Because I know that once I know the information. As far as improvement, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've done so many presentations where I prepared, tried to memorize presentations, had cue cards, index cards. But I think that I wanted to challenge myself, three presentations to actually come out there and see if I can just do it. I was more
Yeah, I was wondering, how come you said it's going to get those,
just because I wanted it to relate the presentation as far as personal experience. So I mean, I don't think maybe I should have clarified that as far as personal experience.
Oh, no,
I'm not saying maybe because of the first presentation.
Well, yeah, so I was expecting that, but, yeah, but I don't know, like, your voice is shaking.
Yeah, but it's I think you control it very well. Control it. Okay, although the text is like white words on black background, I think it fits in with, yeah, I think it fits in with it. It can be colorful and this. Yeah, yeah, so, you are very genuine. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think you seem more comfortable with without.
As far as shakiness, actually having a feeling inside, sometimes I'm very trying to catch
Because I thought I was going to cry, but thank you.
That's
No, I think the focus group slides are a bit too draining, and it's very hard for me to relate it to the concept of organization development. It's a bit off. So, yeah, thank you.
So going off of Mark's comment, I think you have like a really good insight here. You're in, have more experience than probably most people in this room within the organization and being in the center of it all. So I'd like just to see that connection between focus groups and organization. You have an awesome perspective there. Build off of it. Show us how that relates.
But then if you give an outline of what part of the solution, the audience will see that you are already these points. And then you kind of, give us their story for us to figure out like how our topic was to say and let's focus group. One thing was that you may I connect with the people who speak I really respect that, at the same time, becoming a good program and putting a lot of effort, gathering the but out of three times, at least people have been prepared enough. I would put it this way for you, like, imagine that, you have a $1 million contract in your hand, and that's the business that you're going to do it. And, in order to get into the company and get a position, there's great that effort. Like, you bring a good program, and then you, have the courage to take the book up, and put it over here.
I think as everyone said, it was there. Like the material was there, the personal stories there. It just was a little bit convoluted. So having some more structure or clarity, I think the difficulty with with Mark saying like the focus group slide, it was just too casual. Like there's a ton of stuff up there, and you just turn your back totally and are talking to a screen. So yeah, we talk about this, we talk about that, we talk about this, but I don't know how to place that.
Right. My idea was to actually kind of get a little bit more interactive as far as that list. Then I realized, man, it's going to be way too long.
Yeah.
And explain in detail, okay, this is what we do.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to kind of just go
Yeah. But when you give a really quick description of 10 things, it's almost like giving no description of anything. So that's where I think we felt like, oh, I kind of see where you're going, but we missed it, right? Like in that 5-minute presentation, it's not an hour, right? We don't have the time to go through all of those. So instead, it could be something like change management. Focus groups are a huge part of that. So having someone that's in a current focus group that has been for a year at least, what is that experience like? What are the benefits of someone that's in that situation? What have been the positive results from that experience? both personally and maybe professionally, or in your own career individually, but as an organization, how have they changed? Your story, I think, related to that. Again, I'm saying like the content was there, just having a more clear through line of what that means for organizational change and development would have been very helpful for us, instead of having us put together or connect the dots, having you do it more clearly for us. Because then I thought it was a really good example to say, like, you saw a need, you went to your supervisor and said, hey, I think there's a need here for a particular resource. And then something was done, right? Like you were a part of a process, but that was only a kind of cursory explanation of that. It wasn't enough detail of, well, was that just at your location of service center? Was that all service centers, or what does that look like? What does it mean? How many people did this impact? And what kind of, is there any imagery of what that is? You could show us, take a picture, have that visual for us to say, like, look, these resources are here for these people now that were never there before. And like this is what change could mean and look like. This could literally save people's lives. Like, that's an impactful message. That's something people want to hear. And it's there. It's there. It's just a couple steps removed. So make move towards connecting those dots for us, and I think you'd have a really strong presentation. So, yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Justin. For those of you who haven't heard me yet. I'm going to be talking about organizational development with regards to games. So, the 3 points that I want you to focus on during this presentation are, firstly, that the stuff that you're learning in this study of IOP is useful outside of the maybe conventional fields that you thought of it as being applied to. It's also useful for other situations of all kinds. And then the second point is that the organizing principle that I want to focus on tonight is the one where you decide when to group up, when not to group up, to accomplish a task, and how that affects your process. And then also the communication that is necessary to decide when it's right to group up or to do something in individual units. Game theory as a concept came to me through a split second in the TED Talk that we listened to for the week's readings. And game theory is basically the mathematical study of the way people apply their reasoning to problems. I connected to it in a different way because I have 3 younger brothers, and so growing up, I've designed dozens of different types of games and interactions with them. And so I'm used to thinking of things in terms of that type of interaction with me. And so that's where I came. The game we'll be talking about is League of Legends by Riot Games. It's one of the largest games in the world with 100 million active players per month around the world. And but before I talk about that, I'm just going to mention this is what we're tying it to tonight. It's from one of the readings, and it's basically looking at the interactions between working together versus working alone, and how they can have pros and cons to them, and how there's advantages and disadvantages to each. This is the map in the game League of Legends. This is the chessboard that people play on, basically. How the game works, so that you understand it enough for this example. There would be 5 players on either side of the map. There would be purple team and there would be blue team down there, and they have to advance to the other side to win, basically. There are 3 separate avenues that they can take to get to the other side, and they would be encountering obstacles along the way. You know, think of those as the challenges that you face in your business as you reach your goals. They can also go in between the avenues, and they can group up to push for one particular strategy more forcefully than they would on their own in their own separate ways. So again, basically you can go individually confronting the separate challenges, which, as the list mentions, has the advantages of clear designation of tasks, so everyone knows what their role is. In the game, everyone knows kind of from the onset where their main station of attack and defense will be, and so they know where to position themselves to pursue the end goal. Or you can group up in larger, more or less messy team fights to kind of hit those main objectives when necessary, and just push through together. So again, with that graphic, what we don't want, the cons of the two sides, is we don't want to have too much group activity, because then you leave, because then there's fewer experience tried in the workplace, and also just with everyone in one place, you might not be able to get to other things. And then with the other side, basically you might not have what you need to push through on the main objective, or you might, someone might get overwhelmed, that sort of thing. The good parts about it are that when you're working together, you have synergy, you have stronger communication, and you have the potential to kind of lean on each other for support to get through those situations. Whereas when you're working alone, you have your task, and you can do your thing while everyone else does their other thing, and work together from far down. How does that tie into this? Basically, so if everyone groups up to take an objective, say the dragon pit there, everyone groups there, and that can be great. You want it, it's a big objective, but at the same time, you have to be mindful that the enemy top laner might be up there pushing all the way through, and so you might have to divide at the proper time to go confront that as it comes up. And then similarly, at the beginning of this game, you would be all on your own separate ways, that you're all gaining sort of the insight and the experience that you need to continue on towards the end of the game. Because if you're all together at the very beginning, then you don't have as much of a variety of resources to pull from for you to push through to the end. So generally what happens here is people start out dispersed and they gather resources, and then they combine into groups towards the end and push through. So again, this is just one way in which, not necessarily as a business model, but just in everyday life, people are engaging with these things that we're reading about, and they have to determine when they're grouping up, when they're going alone, and what that will accomplish. They have to weigh the opportunity cost of each path, and just have to go forward from there. And yeah, basically the games employ communication to help them know where to go and to be there. It's not just you talking to the people in your group about when you should go help them, but you have to be mindful on your own, keeping an eye on them even when they aren't talking to you, so that you know to go over there when you see the initiative to help someone out. And so that's the reputation. obviously, I was kind of rushed in my preparation for this. I got to class late, that's not great. And didn't have time to practice first. For feedback, I'd like to hear from George, Brenda, Mark.
I thought, like, to start, really unique way to apply an IO principle. Like, if you were to give me 1,000 years to say, apply IO principles to humans, I would never come up with that. That really helps with, like, the expansion of how practical this field is. So that was great. I think you had a great relating point with that. It was a great example of, like, oh, this is how organizations struggle, there's different paths, and the barriers in between objective points. That was really cool, so it was great information. I think the next steps are confidence in the way you present and being comfortable. Personally, it just seemed like you weren't bought into what you were telling us. Yeah, you weren't even engaged in your own presentation, if that makes sense. So I think if you're kind of late and you said you have those factors of like rush and everything, like just a little bit more, doesn't feel like super energetic charisma, but like, hey, this is my idea. I'm selling it to you, providing it. The like, oh, does he really feel this? You might not, but then it's the whole, playing in different parts. I thought overall it was like really
I have talked to Justin Beck during our class time, and he actually talked the way that he presents. So I was going to mention, like, you were up there, and there were some parts where you looked nervous. But like, that's Justin, that's his personality. So what I liked was that you literally took one idea and then made a whole presentation and added all these fantastic details and like something I want to look at too as I go through the readings. Like, what of these like charts, maps would be fantastic to talk about like that. Like you really took one idea and ran that up.
Going off of what George said, a really interesting angle from using the concept of game, right? Especially it's not just a small, kind of knockout version, but it's a legit online game that we all know of, right? And I didn't expect game theory in this like in any presentation, but that's a very interesting approach. And I really like how you connect LL to business. It really intrigues me to do this, and I really love the visuals you. Is that it? I really love the visuals of the LL characters in conflict, and I like how there's like zero text on those two sides, and we just execute it very well. Very well. And so I like the subtle humor on some of the slides, like that frowning face. I'm not sure if it's intentional, but it's pretty smooth. And I like how you balance between the academic, pop culture, and business. So it's not leaning to heavily one side. I do see the personal flair. You don't have to fake it and I can tell you really enjoy the content when you were talking about the game. And strong structure, I and so just one tiny suggestion that this sounds a bit tested in some parts of the so consider releasing in your own content and your original ideas. me through all.
First, I'm thankful that you're here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. It's really nice to have just a broader perspective, right? More ideas, more experience, more things to draw from. So this was really creative. It's clever to bring in things that don't connect and make a connection and show us what that connection is. Like that's a really, I think, important skill. It's something everyone in here has to be able to do. To draw connections between things that maybe not everyone sees are connected, when they clearly are. So that I really appreciate. It was good. The content was funny. You had great screenshots of Ives. I thought that was wonderful. I thought, wow, that was not flattering pictures, but funny ones. So that was good. Yeah, so that part I enjoyed. The content I thought was good. I mean, you used content from the journal articles, content from the TED Talk, content from your own life. I mean, that's a good thing to kind of put all of it together and show a through line in that. And it's not easy to do, but you did it really well. I appreciate that you took the time and effort to make that, to demonstrate that, to make that something visible that we could see. Yeah, your presentation is pretty solid. You're very good. I thought you said earlier in the semester that you didn't have presentation skills, but you clearly do. Yeah. So you guys do really well at this. You did a good job. Now I'm just looking to see buildings and other things in your presentation. So no, it was great. I really appreciate you being here. This was a great presentation. Thank you for it. Good job.
I have a question about